The following program is rated 14 plus and contains mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Another night of gun violence in the city.
Bullets were flying, sending many fleeing for their lives.
What we're seeing now is starting to look more like terrorism.
A brazen daylight shooting left an innocent.
They're shooting in public places. They don't care.
Did this open your eyes to the problems with guns on Toronto streets?
My name is Christina Howard. For over a year, I've been investigating Toronto's illegal firearms market.
I've never seen a gun that looks like this before.
There's everything you can think of, from a sawed-off shotgun to AK-47s, AR-15s.
How hard is it to find a gun in Toronto?
It's not hard at all. It's scary how easily accessible they are. Kids have them.
Toronto hits a record-breaking number of shootings in
The city has averaged more than 400 shootings a year for the past 5 years. And I want to know how criminals are gaining access to these weapons.
Where are the guns coming from?
We were able to trace it to a source out of Michigan.
So I've taken to the streets to find out.
The smuggling routes is as much as you can imagine.
These incidents were out in the open with no regard for human life.
Somebody's benefiting.
Absolutely.
So who's benefiting? How many guns do you think would fit in there?
You're making a massive amount of money.
Everything I did was for money.
Every crime gun tells a story.
Did it look a lot like this?
No. So they've painted the wall. It was just regular brick.
There's nothing remarkable about a location that literally transformed everything that you know.
That's right. And there's no evidence of it whatsoever. None.
On September 11th, 2016, at this spot in Toronto's Liberty Village, Evelyn Fox's son Kissinger was shot and killed while attempting to break up a fight.
Police are not saying much about what happened other than they were called to the area of King and Dufferin just after 4 Sunday morning for reports of shots fired.
Kissinger was Toronto's 49th homicide of 2016 and one of 223 Canadians killed by guns that year.
He came here for a birthday party, and I know that Kissinger actually didn't even want to go out that night. So they parked the car, and Kissinger got out of the passenger side, and he noticed that there was an argument and his friends standing close to the argument.
So the fight was here, and just within seconds, shot right there.
Right.
And they've never found his killer.
No.
Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it does. Just because there was so many people out here who witnessed it. I used to come down here and post the posters, and within like a couple weeks they would take them down. So I just stopped because it just didn't make sense.
Where do you think that the gun involved in Kissinger's death came from?
I have no idea. I don't know. There is a serious issue with guns in the city. Guns are in high demand, and whoever wants them will get them.
Did Kissinger have a background with guns or gangs? Did he have any sort of affiliation like that?
No. He didn't care about anything else going on around him. All he cared about was his family. A lot of his friends would tell me stories about how he would act in school, and always the one who stuck up for the kids that were being bullied. So it doesn't surprise me that he was trying to get the other guy and bring him home. Like, that stuff doesn't surprise me. That's his character for sure. The torment of living without your child is just so unbearable. Like, there's not enough words, adjectives, whatever, to even describe how tormenting it is. It's just the most surreal experience you will ever experience in your life. It's like you're walking in a daze, like a complete daze. You're looking outside of your body, watching yourself, because it's just so unbelievable. Nobody deserves to be shot down in the street.
While Evelyn was sharing her story, police reported 2 more shootings that evening. 1 person was killed. Canada has some of the strictest gun ownership laws in the world, yet nearly 40% of all Canadian murders involve a firearm. In Toronto alone, there was a 20% increase in gun-related murders in 2019. So something's not adding up. What can you tell me about these guns?
These are firearms that have been seized by the Toronto Police.
I've come to meet with the head of Toronto's Guns and Gangs Unit, Inspector Joe Matthews, to find out what these statistics actually mean to those charged with combating the problem.
So this is a Tech-9 with an overcapacity magazine, which is unlawful. This gun is prohibited to possess in Canada.
What about this one?
This gun itself is legal, but it has been modified at the back to give the user the option between repetitive fire and semi-automatic.
This looks like a shotgun that you might see like in a Looney Tunes cartoon or something like that, but it does look like it's been changed.
That's right. The barrel has been shortened and the stock has been removed.
Why would you want to shorten the barrel?
Easier concealment. This could easily fit down a pant leg.
So are most of the guns that you find, are they actually illegal or are they legal? What's the difference?
Illegally possessed is pretty much every time that we seize firearms. Some are also illegal firearms or prohibited firearms that we do seize.
How often does your unit actually confiscate guns?
We take part in dozens of investigations annually. We are seeing more firearms in the street, definitely than we ever have before. So it's very concerning when certain people in the community almost possess these firearms with no fear.
So is there a gun that seems to be the gun of choice?
Handguns. Handguns is the highest percentage of firearms that we seize are handguns. But it's pretty much what's best to conceal. These are real semi-automatic handguns. These firearms were seized in Project Patton, which was an investigation in 2018 into a street gang that was operating in the west end of Toronto. So one single seizure, we seized 60 firearms, all similar to these.
So what's the market like for illegal guns like these?
It's a huge market. You know, as we seize firearms, it's creating a market for more firearms. So we're doing the best we can to get in front of it and get the guns off the street, but when we take guns off the street, that creates a vacuum where more firearms have to come in.
I heard 3 or 4 pops, and then I came outside and I saw a guy laying on the ground.
This shooting was one of 6 incidents that occurred in a violent 24 hours.
2 suspects allegedly fired more than 30 rounds at
The police say they have no way to estimate the true size of Toronto's illegal firearms market. So I'm heading to meet with someone who can hopefully give me some first-hand insight. Dwayne Beckford has been remanded on gun charges since January 2020. Hey, Dwayne. He's currently incarcerated at Toronto East Detention Centre.
You're 39 years old. How many years would you say you've spent in some level of incarceration?
Sheesh, way more than half of my lifetime. Yeah, sad to say, but it's the truth, yeah.
Dwayne has been behind bars in both the US and Canada, and almost always because of guns.
I was convicted of assault in the first degree with a firearm. So, yeah, and I got sentenced to 15 years, suspended after 10 years with 5 years probation.
And because you're Canadian, you were able to come back here?
Yeah, I got extradited back to Canada, yeah.
But you've been convicted of gun-related charges here in Canada.
Correct, yes.
So how did you get those guns?
Cheaply bought or just handed to you, right? Some guys in the neighborhood, they have a lot of them. Basically, the more firepower, the better in the hoods, right? That's how they make it seem.
How hard is it to find a gun in Toronto?
It's not hard at all. It's not hard at all. It's not hard to find. Everybody has them. It's like I said, it's scary how much there is out there right now. How easily accessible they are. Kids have them. Yeah, there's so much young guys with guns right now just barely reaching puberty, and I have a gun on me right now. I'm the man. I'm this. I'm that. My friends gonna respect me now. Nobody's gonna pick on me no more. Nobody's gonna beat me up. Nobody's gonna try and rob me or whatever the reason for having a gun is. It was just to be cool. It was a shock to me how everybody's in here now for a gun charge, and guys are my kids' age, and it's kind of scary to think about. Half these guys don't know any better. That's all they know. That's all they know. That's all they're accustomed to. That's what they're comfortable doing and knowing, you know? So I've met guys that don't even hardly know how to read books or even tell the time on a regular clock, but they know everything there is to know about a firearm. That's crazy. That's scary.
If found guilty, Dwayne is destined to remain behind bars for several more years to come, with half his life already behind him.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. That cool lifestyle, being a cool guy, it's not worth it at all, man. My oldest kid doesn't know who I am, doesn't know much about me. And yeah, that's my firstborn and everything else. So that's like, that was my world at one point, you know? And because of the decisions I made in the past, being ignorant, not knowing certain things, yeah, it cost me a child almost. You know, not growing up in my life, not being a part of her life. It sucks. It sucks.
So it's harming communities, it's harming families, it's breaking up relationships. But somebody's benefiting.
Absolutely.
So who's benefiting?
Whoever's making the dollar, man. But obviously the guy selling is making his buck. And whoever he's getting it from, making their buck and so forth and so forth. But that's been going on since the beginning of the time, right? Way before I knew anything about a street or a street corner. It's just getting more out of control and reckless these days.
A trigger pulled, a girl dead. It's a tragedy.
3 people were found by police with serious injuries.
It's been a long weekend of the gun, the violence spreading across the city.
From what I've learned so far, it seems there's never been an easier time to get a hold of a gun in Toronto. That's made me wonder about Canada's gun ownership laws and what it actually takes to acquire one legally.
Using lane number 5.
Oh, okay, so we're all set up here.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm meeting up with J.R. Cox, who owns and operates gun ranges in Alberta, Ontario, and the UK.
What we're going to do is we're going to shoot a semi-automatic handgun and a revolver.
Okay.
So 9mm and a .38 special. So these are going to be, for your first experience, very user-friendly firearms.
Okay.
Pick up the magazine with your right hand.
Yep, it's unloaded,
It's
I know
unloaded,
that.
but you have to watch because it will have bullets.
Why do people want guns? What are they using them for?
Sport. Like, they're not buying them to put them under their pillow for self-defense. It's much more of a zen sport than people think. It's just you and your target. If you do everything right, you shoot a bullseye. Just the butt back a bit. Now you're gonna look at the front sight, you're gonna pull the trigger and hold it to the rear. Oh, good job. And then you can just rest. What do you think?
I actually think it's pretty fun. I had to fight the urge to not close my eyes.
You were worried about hitting the target, you got it in the 7 ring.
That was pretty good. What's the process to actually get a gun here in Canada?
Well, gun ownership is difficult but not onerous. Okay, so that was. So you have to take a firearm safety course. It's 2 or 3 days of training, depending on how it's broken down, to get the hours in. Once you get your hours in, right, and you do your test, you pass that. You take that paperwork, you send it off to the government. They check a couple of references, check with your spouse, ex-spouse, significant other to make sure that they are not afraid of you having a firearm, take some money from you, send you back a license. Oh, good job. Bullseye.
It actually hit me in the face.
So once you get your license, then you can buy and use a firearm without supervision. Now we're doing this, we're moving on to the revolver.
Okay.
And it'll go clunk.
Feels very nerve-wracking right now.
It's not gonna be. When you pull the trigger, you go, oh, I kind of like this one. All of your information goes into the CPIC, so the Canadian Police Information Computer System. The Firearm Center gets a report every day on every firearm owner. All 2.2 million of us, we get a check. Sex offenders don't. So if you're a sex offender, after 3 years, you can apply to come off the list. If you're a firearms owner, every day you're checked.
All right. Sorry.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm happy with how you're controlling it.
Okay.
That's all trigger because you're trying to figure it out.
Okay.
So let's do it again. Whoa, good job. Well, that's a great group. Gun ownership takes time and it takes a lot of training. And I agree with safety training. right? Because it's a tool. If it's used improperly, people die. It's an inanimate object. A firearm kills nobody. It's the user that kills somebody. You watch of all the shootings going on, and there's been a rash of shootings. Not one of them was a licensed, legal firearms owner.
The Canadian Firearms Registry makes the criminal use of a legal handgun very easy to trace. So if the weapons criminals are using are illegal, where are they coming from?
Thanks for meeting me.
Yeah.
I've set up a meet with Detective Scott Ferguson. His full-time job is to trace the guns used in crimes for a government agency called Criminal Intelligence Services Ontario. This is the first time anyone from his organization has spoken on camera.
How do you actually trace the guns to their origin?
The way it works is we get the complete firearms information, the occurrence information, who was in possession of it, if there was a vehicle involved, the vehicle information, we get that, and we do social media background on possessors and purchasers.
You actually go through people's Instagram and Facebook and, you know, their TikTok accounts.
If they don't lock them down, they're fair game, so.
Wow, I just wouldn't have known that you were so thorough.
Absolutely. We're pretty exhaustive in our analysis of every crime gun that we get and every result we get back.
Can you give me an example of where your techniques have helped to trace a gun back to a homicide or a shooting?
I can. There was a shooting of a 16-year-old boy in London, Ontario, and through the comparison of the bullets and casings, that gun was also linked to the death of a 12-year-old girl here in Toronto. We were able to trace it to a source out of Michigan, and through the collateral investigation between the ATF and Toronto Police, we were able to identify a group of 4 individuals who had purchased 120 guns and smuggled them into Ontario.
That's impressive. Can all guns be traced?
No. Some guns have obliterated serial numbers, but there are forensic techniques that enable us to restore the serial number on a firearm. I can actually show you a photo here. This is a firearm that was seized in a crime here in Toronto. And you can see that the serial numbers, not only the serial numbers, but all the markings are removed from it. So without getting into very specifics on how it's done, we can restore the serial number.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah, and it almost reads like a book. Every crime gun tells a story.
So where are the guns coming from?
70 to 80% of the handguns seized in crimes in Ontario are from the US.
Wow.
And I can tell you that the reason why the crime gun market is what it is for money. There is so much profit to be made. If you buy a brand new gun in Florida at a gun show for $199, you can get over $5,000 for it in Canada. And they're so small, the guns, that if you purchase 10 or 20 of those guns, you're making a massive amount of money if you can get them into this province, into our country.
According to the Canadian Border Services Agency, over 370 guns were seized at U.S. points of entry into Ontario in 2019. In that same year, over 300 guns of U.S. origin were seized by Toronto police. This is clearly big business, and I want to find out how it all works.
It actually seems pretty quiet.
It is very quiet. We're a pretty hidden neighborhood, but if we had enemies, they would be coming in through here. We were good at keeping enemies out of our neighborhood.
Marcel Wilson headed up the Toronto branch of a major international gang before he was legally old enough to drink. His criminal exploits span beyond Canada into Colombia, Peru, and Panama.
Once I kind of took over leadership here, I made sure that we stopped the whole bullying and beating of the little kids, and the mothers actually felt safe with us. We protected them, we protected the homes, we protected the kids.
Do you remember when you first started carrying a gun?
Yes, a friend of mine gave me I believe it was a 22 was my first gun, very small handgun. And I was about 13 and I was homeless, I felt vulnerable, and it made me feel powerful.
How did you become like a gang leader by the time you were 17?
I guess people that are considered important in the criminal world noticed that I was good at hurting people, and that I wasn't your typical gangster. I wasn't like your yo kind of guy. I got attention, I got noticed, and I, for again lack of better terms, graduated into a leadership role.
That was then. Now he heads up the One by One movement, a think tank aimed at curbing gang violence and helping people get out of organized crime. What is the illegal gun market like in Toronto?
It's a really big problem. There's everything you can think of, from the $80 rental that may be like a 30-year-old sawed-off shotgun to AK-47s, AR-15s.
What do you mean rent? Like you're literally going up to somebody and you're saying,
Yeah,
can I borrow it for the night?
Yeah, here's for $80. You go do what you got to do with it and come back. So they're not even worried about getting caught with the weapon with X amount of bodies on it. That doesn't even matter anymore.
So how does a gun get from the southern U.S., for example, up to Toronto?
We used several different avenues of doing that, and some were like tricked out cars, or, there were areas along the border where there are indigenous reservations, and we would exploit them. It can be as ruthless as a family being kidnapped and forcing a mule to come across the borders, where if they're unsuccessful or if they give up the information, their family will be harmed. And of course, another touchy issue that people don't want to talk about would be the corrupt border agent.
Do you think that Toronto police or even just national police have a real handle on the gun problem?
I think they're very aware of the chain that starts in the U.S. and ends up in our communities, and that it's our communities that are suffering the residuals of it.
The double shooting has left one man dead and another with life-threatening injuries.
Now, any group of kids can obtain a weapon.
Police are also investigating another shooting in North York.
And tomorrow go out and commit as much havoc as possible.
One man was gunned down and suffered serious, possibly life-threatening injuries.
So we're starting to see a mutation where it's starting to look more like terrorism opposed to organized gangsterism.
A brazen and targeted shooting.
The double shooting has left one man dead and another.
The terrifying moments sent those in the vicinity fleeing.
Gang activity seems to be at the root cause of Canada's illegal gun problem. And the point of origin for almost all of Toronto's street guns is the US. But more than a quarter of all firearm-related homicides in Canada aren't gang-related. So is there another potential source for illegal weapons?
It's really quite easy. You can find a ton of things online.
Dr. Thomas Holt from Michigan State University specializes in cybercrime and how illegal markets work on the dark web. I want to know if any of the guns trafficked to Canada could come via this route. Are guns actually being sold? Is it actually happening on the dark web?
We have to assume they are being sold because there have been arrests for dark web gun sales and transfers. So they happen. It's really just a question of how often they happen that we don't know.
How big is this market?
If you look at the total number of vendors, we only have about 10 to 15 at any point in time in our sample. So it's not a lot of people, whereas if you compare that to the vendors we have for counterfeit documents, credit card numbers, drugs, those are dozens of vendors for each of those product categories. So it's a much smaller component of the overall illicit market online.
So how does it all work?
First, you would need to download Tor. so that way you can actually get onto the dark web. It will encrypt your connection, open up the browser, and then you start searching. You have to know where to go. It's almost like eBay or Amazon. And once you find a person who's selling that product, you see how they get paid. You look at what they have for sale. If you feel like the vendor is reliable, you reach out to them, explain what you want. Some of them will have a contact form on their website, so you actually input exactly what you want and send.
You talk about things like an Amazon-style marketplace. How anonymous is it really to be purchasing things there?
Well, that's the value of the dark web, is that it can be very difficult to actually identify the participants. So from a law enforcement standpoint, depending on the country that you're in, it can be very difficult to actually get the physical location of someone who's running a dark web site. And the same is true for buyers. The way that Tor works is it essentially routes your web traffic through other Tor users, so that when you get to an end website, they may be seeing the fifth computer in a chain rather than your actual computer system. So it's hard to get a physical location to a person to actually serve a search warrant or engage in an arrest.
Do you know if a lot of guns are being shipped to Canada this way?
It's really hard for us to know. A vendor may say, yes, I ship to Canada, but the extent to which the number of Canadian transactions happens is really hard to know.
Even a cursory search of the dark web throws up a number of sites peddling illegal firearms. I've never seen a gun that looks like this before. There's a Chris Vector SDP 45 ACP Special Duty pistol. This is another gun that I don't think you'd be able to find. It's a standard manufacturing SMC DP12 shotgun. It's double barrel 16 round pump action shotgun. It's the meanest shotgun on the market. Get it while you can. Supply is limited on these. And no returns. And it's $1,400 plus shipping. A lot of these guns, even the ones that you can buy in Canada, you wouldn't be able to buy without a proper restricted or even non-restricted license, but you don't need any of that here. Here, they're not going to check my age of majority, and they're not going to check if I have a PAL or not, or a firearms license. So this one says you can only pay by Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of the cryptocurrencies used to buy items on the dark web. You can purchase it online or even through a Bitcoin ATM, but those transactions can be digitally traced. In the criminal world, cash is always king. But does using it to buy cryptocurrency actually mask illegal activity, like buying a gun?
Okay, so if I wanted to get about $350 worth of Bitcoin using cash, how would I go about doing that?
Well, we can use a wallet app on your phone.
Anonymous Pug is a cryptocurrency expert who wants to keep her real identity a secret.
I have never done anything like this before.
It's okay, it's practically point and click.
And what do I do now?
So first you can click on receive.
Okay.
And you want to receive Bitcoin, so select that at the top.
Okay.
Okay. And this is your Bitcoin address. I am going to take a photo of that with my app.
Pug is transferring money from her Bitcoin account to the one I've just created.
This contains all of the data for your public key address. Bitcoin uses asymmetrical cryptography. It's complicated math that you don't need to understand to use this.
Okay.
All right, so now I'm going to put in the amount in Canadian dollars. So we will enter $350.
Okay.
I'm going to hit confirm.
Okay.
And it was sent. And once this transaction is confirmed, it will show how much you have. But we have to wait for the network to validate the transaction first.
Okay, because right now it says I have
Right now
zero.
it's showing nothing.
But this will come, so
It
the
will.
verification will show up.
With the Bitcoin network, it takes 10 minutes to confirm a transaction and add that block of data onto the blockchain, which is a record of every transaction that's ever happened.
So why would people even use this?
The biggest thing with it, it's not anonymous, but it's private. You didn't have to give away any personal information. You didn't have to identify yourself. You didn't have to show any of your ID. That right now, that wallet on your phone is not actually tied to your personal identity.
But even with this level of privacy, Pug explains that having the transfer of funds tied to my personal phone means it can conceivably still be traced back to me by law enforcement.
The anonymity comes from the steps we take. If you truly wanted this to be anonymous, you would probably want to buy a burner cell phone and just a pay-as-you-go SIM card for it, and buy it somewhere in another town or another city so that you're not recognized going into the store, and then use it connected to a tower somewhere far away.
So why would criminals even use this if it's not anonymous?
Most criminals don't. Most criminals do not use Bitcoin. That's a bad rap that the currency has gotten. Bitcoin is more favored by libertarians, I would say, than criminals.
So it is possible to get a gun this way, but the steps required to keep the transaction completely anonymous are complicated and hard work. Most criminals go the easy route, buying weapons brought in illegally over the US border. So that's where I'm headed, to meet with someone I hope can complete this picture.
So what can you tell me about who you are and what you used to do?
I've done a lot in my life, a lot of bad things, but the worst thing I ever did was smuggle guns into Canada.
Investigating the world of illegal guns has led me to the Canada-US border, to a man who wants to be known only as the Captain. A former smuggler, he now lives in the suburbs, hiding in plain sight.
Why do you want to have your identity concealed?
I realized that I need to break free from crime, and I've cut off all my associates from the past. And I just want to focus on living a very low-key life and spending time with my family.
So what was your role in gun smuggling?
My part was sending the drugs down to the States to have the guns come back. And once they got here, I was to take the serial numbers off the guns and hand them out to the buyers or the sellers and put them on the streets.
How did you choose the drivers?
I will not lie. It was very easy to find people who were looking for extra money. So basically it was my choice to say this person's good or this person's bad. And we knew that our job was done properly. We knew that everything was packed away properly, that nobody was going to see it. So there was absolutely no suspicion whatsoever. It was all about making sure that when they got to the border, that they knew what they were doing. I mean, are they nervous when they get to the border? Do we have the confidence to put them through?
Did you look for a specific type of vehicle for them to go down in?
No, we rented vehicles. I loaded them up here, and basically we just put them in that vehicle.
Can you show me how to do it?
I could walk you through it step by step. It all depends on what vehicle I'm using at the time, depending on where I'm going to put it. The spot that I used the most was the doors. So basically I would take the product and put it into the outer shell, or the outer bag, which is a sealed bag. So put it in here. Then we used what was called rocker guard, just to blacken it up. So once it's in the side of the door, it would just basically be black. So if somebody was to take a camera or something like that, you would see this, only this black thing sitting there. So you couldn't even tell. So basically, I would take off the door panel. I would pull the door back like this. What I'll do is I'll peel back this part of the vehicle so I can get access. And then I would take these packages and try to go right into the bottom and push it right up to the front. And then reseal this back. Put it back the exact same way it was. Have to test the door to make sure that the window goes up and down without any hindrance.
How many guns do you think you could fit in a cavity of that size?
Well, in a truck, you could probably put 2 or 3
without
any problem.
In each door?
Yeah.
So if we're saying 3, that's 12.
Yes. Plus ammo, because you can always find some extra space.
What type of profit would you be looking at there with 12 or 13 guns?
So the average gun we were paying, I think, around $700 US, and we were selling it for around $2,500.
So that there is a big markup there.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And now I'm gonna put the skin itself back on.
And you can do this without leaving a mark at all?
I always tried. I'm putting this in to the door, clicking it all back in place. Get everything screwed back in, and we're good to go.
You make it almost seem easy. Did you ever screw up?
No, I didn't screw up. I had no idea it was coming. I was going to hang out with some friends, left my apartment, and all of a sudden I turned a corner and got hit from behind by another car. And then all of a sudden I saw the red lights flashing in on me, and I was scared shitless. And then they identified themselves, and I knew that it was over. At that point, I was never going to be the same.
The captain was scooped up in an international sting and served nearly 9 years in a federal prison. His lifestyle now is very different from the one he enjoyed as a smuggler.
The bottom line is, after you've tasted money, eventually it becomes an addiction to have money. So everything I did was for money. I sacrificed everything I had just to make more money.
A little whiles back, we spoke with a murder victim's mother, and we asked her what she would say to somebody that was involved in the gun trade like you. Do you mind watching this?
No problem.
What would you say to the person that put that gun in Kissinger's killer's hands, that smuggled it over or made sure that that gun was accessible on the streets?
You're disgusting. Like, you are absolutely disgusting knowing that those guns are going to get into the hands of people who are killing my children. It makes no sense to me. There's no amount of money that you should want to have put in your hand that would be at the expense of somebody's life. How do you live with yourself? You are a disgusting individual.
That is actually the first time I've ever heard something like that, and it actually cuts into my heart because I see her pain, I feel her pain, I can never empathize with her pain, but I'm not going to make any excuses. I was a piece of garbage. She's right. I was disgusting. And I'm sorry that she is going through this, and I'm sorry that she feels this way, and she has every right to. I can't change that day, and I can't turn back the clock. All I can say is that I hope that guns will come off the street, and then people bringing guns in will be held accountable. I don't think there's enough time that I could have done to make up for what she has lost. And all I can say is I'm sorry.
Everything I've learned points to the U.S. border as being by far the biggest problem when it comes to gun crime. But right now, the border isn't the government's focus.
It'll be remembered as one of the worst mass shootings in Canadian history. Now Nova Scotia is trying to pick up the pieces after a mass shooting incident which left at least 19 people dead.
We are ending the proliferation of these weapons and the militarization of our society.
Following the 2020 massacre in Nova Scotia, the emphasis has been on banning high-powered firearms. The kind that J.R. Cox used to sell until the government forced him to take them off the shelves.
Do you think the restrictions would be able to effectively combat the street violence that we're seeing all across the country?
Well, I think we all know that it doesn't. The Police Chiefs Association, they say the ban won't work. The various organizations say the ban won't work. Even the mayor of Toronto now is saying a ban won't work. So that's the thing, is they're doing it ass backwards. Because no criminal is gonna use the 28-pound rifle that you use for long-range shooting. That's worth $25,000. Criminals aren't going to do that. Like, they don't need to do that. So none of the measures actually add up to reducing crime and reducing firearms on the street. They're attacking legitimate firearms owners and spending a tremendous amount of money to do it. But they're ignoring the border issues and the gang issues. Like, it's billions of dollars done to placate a very small minority who are emotionally charged to hate firearms.
What do you think should be done then in order to stop, gang violence and gun violence?
Take a chunk of money and spend it on the border. If the guns are all being imported, give our border patrols the ability to actually stop these things at the border. Because if the guns don't come at the border, then we're not going to have such an issue.
We are wasting a lot of time and money.
Marcel Wilson agrees that legal guns, no matter how big or small, aren't the real problem.
Gun bans, zero effect. I could try and guess a million reasons why they're taking this approach, but myself, people like us, have been screaming from the sidelines now for well over a year. Some of us have been doing it for 10 years. That we need community investment to address root cause issues, which will quell some of the gun violence. Gangsters not born, we're created. You know, someone who's motivated enough can kill you with a rock. So we need to look at why that person even wants to pick up a gun and harm someone else. From my experience, that's addressing things like poverty, lack of education, lack of resources, dealing with mental health issues, especially in my communities where that's a taboo subject matter.
I was just like, you know what, I can't be around here anymore. Like, just seeing people just continue to live like nothing occurred here.
Evelyn Fox has also been advocating for zero gun violence, and like Marcel, believes the focus should be on the root cause. Do you think that like a handgun ban or any sort of ban on firearms would have prevented Kissinger from being killed?
No. It doesn't matter. They can ban every gun they want in Canada. The fact is that the guns are in high demand, and whoever wants them will get them. A gun ban is a Band-Aid. The government is the ones who failed our communities. If you're not addressing the actual need of why those people are picking up a gun, then we're still gonna have the same problem. But I guess I just didn't expect it to happen to me. But I honestly did not think that this would be my story, that this would be my life, that it would be my son that would be a victim of someone shooting into a crowd of people. A lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to keep going after your child is murdered. The last hours of my son's life repeats in my head over and over all day long, like from the time that I get up to the time I go to bed. And my son was not in an argument with anybody. He was on his way home. On his way home to come and pick up the kids in the morning. I should have had my son pick up his kids in the morning, and we should have had dinner that night together. We should have had family time on the Sunday, and instead, my entire world got shattered. And I'm sorry, but I'm not willing to sacrifice any of my children, any of my grandchildren, or any of my friends and family for anybody. Not one more person. We cannot allow murderers to walk these streets unaccountable.